Okay, calm down. You got rivers, man. You got rivers, man. Okay, calm down.
Hello and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. It is so great to be back with you all. Thank you for tuning in. We have a great show for you tonight. We have a really full show. We have 3 different segments, and we are always excited when we have multiple guests, and that's what we have for you in store. Welcome back to people like myself, actually. I was just in Istanbul. I was at the People's Tribunal, the Gaza Tribunal in Istanbul, and I will talk about that a little bit at the end of the episode. And it was a really incredible experience, and we'll talk about that more. But we are running late because we had some tech issues, maybe Mossad intervention, who knows. So I'll just walk people through in case you're just tuning in for the first time. This is the Katie Halper Show. Please do give this a thumbs up. That's a great way to fight back against the algorithmic suppression that we have to deal with. Please do subscribe. That's another great way to support the show. And to do that, you hit subscribe and then you press the bell. That way you don't miss any of our streams. And also, if you can become Patreon supporters, we really appreciate that at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And when you do that at the $5 a month level, you get to have access to extended interviews, bonus interviews, behind the scenes stuff, also early releases. And if you can't pull that off, then you can support us at the $1 a month level. And that is a way that you just literally make the show happen, because it's not an exaggeration to say that we could not do the show without your support. I'm also going to be talking more about the tribunal over the course of the next couple of weeks, because they were just incredible presentations. And I also, the week before, I was doing some speaking, and I met the great Naledi Pandor of South Africa, who is the anti-apartheid justice fighting warrior. Not justice fighting against injustice and fighting against apartheid and fighting for the people of Palestine. She brought South Africa's genocide case to the ICJ, and that was wonderful. So we'll have some video of my interview with her. And I also got to meet some incredible people in St. Louis and heard a really horrific story about a young man from Gaza. And I'll be playing a video from that next week, and also bring you more important information about his case. And I think that's about it. But speaking of St. Louis, I was lucky enough to run into one of our guests, the person who we're about to bring on, who was at an event that I did for Gaza. And you guys know and love him because we've had him on before, and people are always thrilled to hear his insights and hear his unique stories from the movement. He's been in this struggle for decades. And I'm speaking of none other than Omali Yeshitela, who is the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru movement. He's going to talk to us about the state of fascism right now, and also tell us in particular about the 17th annual Black People's March on the White House that's happening on November 1st. He's going to tell you about what that is and how it differs from the No King's Day. So without any further ado, Chairman Yeshitela.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm really glad to be with you, and it was great seeing you in St. Louis at that event. It was really important, and you made a very impressive presentation.
Oh, thank you.
At the event. Yeah, and I appreciate the stance that people are taking around Palestine.
And before we proceed, I forgot to say that we're also going to be speaking to a very brave Palestinian American who is going to talk to us about a horrific story that's happening, and you guys probably have heard about that, and that is the imprisonment of countless Palestinians and countless Americans. We're going to be speaking, after we speak to the chairman, to Zeyad Kadur about his nephew, who is literally languishing in a prison as we speak. His nephew, Mohammed Ibrahim, who is a 16-year-old U.S. citizen. who is behind bars in an Israeli prison as we speak. And then after we speak to Zeyad, we're going to be speaking to the great historian Samuel Biagetti. And kind of the thread throughout all of this is the end of the New World Order. And I think that, starting off with the chairman is a perfect way to start doing that. But just let us know, tell us what you are up to right now with your fight against fascism, your fight also against neoliberalism, and the upcoming Black People's March on the White House.
Thank you so much. I think it's really important for me to say that for a long period of time, the struggle of African people in this country has suffered from assassinations and the undermining of a particular politic that achieved great significance during the 1960s. And this politic of anti-colonialism was something that was replaced by struggles against racism. And that was extremely problematic. The struggle against colonialism, first of all, it recognized that the United States itself is a settler colony. And that's extremely important for us, because when we talk about Gaza, I think it's necessary for us to talk about these Gazas all over this country, that these concentration camps euphemistically referred to as Indian reservations, where the lifespan of the people is sometimes in the 50s and what have you. And incredible struggles have happened. And of course, as we know, one of the most recent examples of that struggle, of course, was Leonard Peltier, who was able finally to walk out of the prison after more than a half century being locked up. So for us, the question is one that we've tried to win what's characterized as the left in this country, the white left too, is the struggle against colonialism. And this has been a big problem historically, from back to the days of the Black Panther Party, if you will, even going back further. When you look at the movements, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and what have you, assassinations of Malcolm and even King, who was swept up during this period of anti-colonial fervor that was happening in this country and around the world. Martin Luther King, for example, was at the independence ceremony for Ghana, and he recognized the significance of the struggle against colonialism globally. So it was the intent of this government, who in its so-called counterinsurgency program that was called COINTELPRO, it intentionally described what it was about was destroying what it called Black nationalism, hate organization, hate groups. We were one of those groups, the Panthers, all the groups that stood for independence, that stood for recognition that African people in the United States are colonized just as much as Palestinians, which is one of the reasons we were first out of the gate struggling in support for Palestine. 1967, after the so-called 67 war, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that I was a member of, one of the first organizations that came out. And as a consequence of that, the whole left and all the liberals took all the resources, money from SNCC, et cetera. And so the colonial question has been a fundamental question. And what has occurred is that the left has treated us in very much the way that colonizers treat subjects, is that in order for us to be heard, we had to bow to their definition of reality, which was quite different from what it was we experienced. And so what they would require is, generally speaking, the so-called struggle against fascism is usually a struggle against one sector of the colonial ruling class versus another sector. Fascism is an anomaly. It is not something that happens all the time. Colonialism is there all the time. And colonialism was there before there was a constitution, before there was a Bill of Rights that said that we had certain rights, et cetera. In fact, you mentioned the whole No King's Day, which is extraordinary, because even when you talk about No King's Day, you're talking about the struggle that colonizers here were engaged with, the ones who sent them here in the first place. And it was the struggle, as we've said, that that people fought for the freedom to oppress. So you have colonizers here fighting against the king. That's where in 1797, when the Bill of Rights was passed, African people were property in this country. That wasn't for us and never has been for us. And so this, they put me on trial saying that the Russians told us to talk about free speech and reparations and things like this, and that we were working for Russians. But the fact is that the Russians had no experience in what it is that we were talking about. We were the ones who experienced this, and we have always been on the forefront of the question of free speech, freedom of assembly, because who would be on the forefront more than those who didn't have any of that? And we died. Many people died. And people talk about this current era of crisis that we're experiencing today. When I say we, I'm talking about crisis of the system that has created a situation where it betrays all of the fundamental beliefs that it says is foundational in terms of what America is, including the Bill of Rights, including First Amendment, including the various kinds of freedoms. And it's reached a place where the system reveals itself as so fragile that it cannot even tolerate disagreement, can't tolerate a discussion, can't tolerate a discussion around Palestine or anything like that. So put people in prison and worse. And so this is the thing that we've been confronted with. And so for 17 years now, and this kicked off, I think it's really important. We've been having Black People's March in the White House for 17 years. And it started shortly after the selection of Barack Hussein Obama as the president of the United States. And which was really important for us because Obama played into this notion of the end of oppression of African people in this country, about it being some kind of post-racial situation. In fact, he made statements like some 90-some-odd% of what was happening against African people had been resolved. And so, he put forth this kind of nonsense. And he was also engaged in wars against the peoples around the world. He was a vicious imperialist. He was white power in blackface. And it was very treacherous because it tricked a lot of people around the world. I remember Hugo Chavez meeting him for the first time and giving him a book around what has happened to the indigenous people in this country. I think Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee was something that he gave to him with an assumption that somehow Obama was going to help to change things.
It was the open veins of Latin America.
Open veins of Latin America. Thank you. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Obama was white power in blackface. And in fact, his selection, actually, I saw hysteria among African people. It was extraordinary because there was a presumption that his coming to power meant that somehow that was going to reflect in the conditions of existence of African people. People all around the world felt like this was, and even many white people voted for Obama because they thought it was going to be a drastic transformation. And of course, Obama turned out to be just another version of colonial white power.
Right.
So we started this, and because we thought it was really important with Obama being there, we organized the first national demonstration against Obama. And that was something like 9 months after he was elected. And some Africans criticized us for criticizing Obama. It has been something we've done annually since that time, because an objective has been to resurrect the anti-colonial movement. And the Black is Back Coalition is comprised of something like 17 different organizations, crossing the political and ideological spectrum, with united around the question of the struggle against colonialism. That's one of the struggle it's united around. So we go into Washington, D.C. Again, the 17th time we will go. And we expect there to be a really significant mobilization. We got people coming from throughout the U.S. Washington, D.C., as you know, is one of the places that the United States has unleashed National Guard troops to control our people. It's always been a problem, Washington, D.C. At one juncture, 70 to 80% of the population was African, and they've been pushing Africans out because it was an incredible contradiction to have the capital of the United States sitting in the middle of a hostile territory. And I say hostile because some of you may remember, well, Katie, you're too young, but
My
when
mom was there, I'm sure.
the assassination of King, it led to rebellions throughout this country, and Washington, D.C. was on fire, to the point that they actually had to surround the Capitol, the White House, with tanks and whatever for fear that the Organization of African People was much greater than what it was. And so that's always been a problem. And so now we have all of these people now, this whole gentrification, just like Harlem and other places that used to be Black, pushing the African population out. And so it's going to be really important for us to be there. And our message going forward is that reinforcements are on the way. So people are going to be coming there. And the theme of the Black is Back mobilization and conference is don't agonize, organize. Right. And we say don't agonize because what we see happening with this administration is something that has frightened a lot of people. And people are concerned. And the biggest concern is based on the fact that there appears not to be any alternative to the Democratic Party. And many Africans, as you know, turned against the Democratic Party, partially because of Palestine, partially because Africans had concluded that the Democratic Party had never given anything back to the African community. And something like, I think the Trump administration got something like 40% of the African vote. That's never happened before in history because people turned their backs against the Democratic Party, but they felt they had no alternative. We are that alternative. And that's what we're bringing. The struggle for self-determination is the alternative to both the Democrats and the Republican Party.
I wanted to ask you more about the distinction, because I think that I've said this before on my show. I think that there are two tendencies. Sometimes people equate the Democrats and the Republicans too much, as if they're the exact same. Exactly. And then sometimes people will exceptionalize Trump too much, as if he's a total aberration. But really, there's something in between those things. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, I think it's really important for you to make that point because it was the Biden administration that attacked us. It was and tried to imprison us for 15 years. It was the Biden administration. In fact, it was Hillary Clinton who, when she lost the first election, because Trump is accused of being problematic and against democracy because he did not accept his presumed loss of that election. But that started with Clinton. Exactly. When Clinton lost the election the first time, she said she didn't lose the election, that the Russians were involved, and that Russian intrigue is what brought Trump to power. And
they decided over pizza. They were having pizza the night that she lost, and apparently they said, okay, we're going to put this on the Russians. And by the way, for people, I forgot to set this up, and we're going to get into this after your analysis here. But we will talk more about what Chairman Yeshitela went through when he was targeted as part of this Russiagate conspiracy. But just so, because you referred to the attacks against you, so we'll talk about that next. But just so people aren't confused, we'll get to that next.
Yeah, I just think that's extremely important. That
or unless you want to bring it up now, it's up to you how you bring it up.
It's okay, but just that it was the Democrats and Clinton who raised this, and I will remind people that it was the Democrats and Republicans collectively who participated in killing Patrice Lumumba. Eisenhower on his way out, Kennedy on his way in. They participated collectively in killing and tracking down and killing Patrice Lumumba in Congo, who was killed, his body cut in little pieces, put in acid and what have you, so that nothing would be left. And one CIA agent kept one tooth from Lumumba that was just recently returned to the Congo. So, they both, it was Kennedy, it was Clinton, who, not Clinton, but Kennedy, who initiated the Bay of Pigs attack in Cuba. So, this thing about the Democrats and Republicans, you got this contest that occurs all the time. Elections, generally speaking, in this country, generally speaking, nonviolent contests between sectors of the ruling class for control of the state. And like in 2016, there was this extraordinary thing that showed the split of the ruling class, where something like 16 candidates were vying for the nomination for the Democrat and Republican presidencies, 16. And each of them, of course, funded by different sectors of the ruling class, which was a statement of crisis and fracturing of the unity of the ruling class in this country. So that's what elections are. And it's not about freedom and all of these things that people have talked about. And the people have to be able to find their way through this process. And the government attacked us they attacked us in 1996. They came 300 strong. They think 300 strong and attacked our office in 1996 because we were fighting them around the murder of African people there, police murders of African people in St. Petersburg, Florida. In this instance, in 2022, they came July 29th, 2022. They came pre-dawn raids here in St. Louis. They raided my home of me and my wife. They came with armored vehicles, drones,
flash grenades.
The grenades, so-called stun grenades, and just a whole array of forces. They attacked 7 of our offices and homes in St. Petersburg, Florida, and St. Louis, Missouri. And they said that the work that we have been doing for reparations, we had initiated a anti-genocide campaign in this country, that had collected 130,000 signatures from people from everywhere, talking about taking the United States to the ICJ for genocide against African people based on the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. They said the Russians were responsible for that. They said, all of the work that we have been doing was by the Russians, etc. And so
it's so racist also because you have such a sophisticated and consistent and decades-long analysis of politics, and the idea that, you must have gotten these ideas to criticize NATO from the Russians. Like this person, this chairman, Yeshitela, obviously can't come up with those thoughts on his own.
Well, I think they played into a presumption that they have created in the minds of a lot of people in this country, that African people are just inert forces here just to be pumped with stuff. And a problem they have is they accept themselves to be able to tell us what to do all the time. And they have sycophants who they, in our communities, who they do tell what to do all the time. And some of them are well known. And some of them have represented the United States in Africa and other places, etc. So if we're doing something on our own, that they're not telling us to do, somebody has to tell us to be doing it other than ourselves. We have no agency of our own. And there's a whole body of people capable of believing that precisely because that's been the narrative for the longest period of time. Right. So anyway, they threatened me, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, 2 people who are part of our movement with 15-year prison sentences. They put us on trial, charged us for violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, 1. That was the critical thing, punishable for 10 years, and then charged us with conspiracy to be unregistered foreign agents for foreign power. And so they took us to trial, and they said it was going to last 30 days. That was what they expected. It lasted something like 8 or 9 days because they had no witnesses. The witnesses they had were all FBI agents, 12 FBI agents, 2 persons who worked were experts from universities, both of whom were Russians, and trying to get their citizenship stuff right here inside this country, and they put us on trial, and we didn't put forth a single witness. But what we did do, our lawyers, we had incredible lawyers. We had a lawyer who walked into a courtroom, and the first time I'm sure it's ever happened in a courtroom in this country, and he walked in. And he threw his fist in the air and said, Uhuru. And he said it 3 times, Uhuru, Uhuru. And he says, I'm saying this because it means freedom. freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of all these things. And you're going to be hearing it throughout this trial. And you're going to be hearing about Russia, 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 Russia. It's a bogus thing. And that's the way we approached it. The lawyer who formerly represented me said that Yeshtitela is not for sale. He's a revolutionary. So we weren't running from it. We weren't ducking, hiding who we were. We were saying exactly who we were because we thought that was the thing that we had going for us, not to run from that. And so what happened ultimately was that they convicted us, the jury convicted us or said that we were innocent of being Russian agents, but we were guilty of what do you call it? Conspiring to be something that we didn't do, that we weren't. It was an extraordinary kind of verdict. And that was the punishment of 5 years. The judge said that he had problems with that verdict and that that nobody was going to jail, nobody was going to be fined. And that, so we ended up with 3-year probation and no fines for anybody. And so we're working now. We are still involved in trying to get that whole conspiracy thing thrown out. We're in court around that, but I still am in a situation where I can't travel without asking them for permission to travel. They can come to my home anytime they want to come to my home. So those kinds of restrictions have been imposed on me, but we are winning. I feel quite confident of where we are in history at this moment. And that's why this Black is Back mobilization is so important to me. May I just say that there's going to be transportation coming from various places in this country. There's going to be a bus leaving from New York and New Jersey, and people can go to www.getonthebus.info. One word, getonthebus.info. And it's info, not .com, but .info. Okay. People can go. There's going to be a van leaving from St. Louis, Missouri on Friday, October 31st. The transportation will be coming from various other places, Chicago, and in the South as well. And you can go to also the blackisbackcoalition.org, blackisbackcoalition.org, and get more information. And the phone number that can be called is 973 929-1933, 973-929-1933. And so, I just think it's really incredible moment. And I really want to express my appreciation to you, Comrade Katie. That was a great presentation that you made in St. Louis, and the stance that you've taken around Palestine and the Palestinian people. I think that it's also going to be helpful to define this as not just Gaza, because it's Palestine and the Palestinian people. And Palestine is occupied territory from our perspective. That's why the slogan "From the river to the sea" is so important. And we say from the river to the sea, and we say from sea to shining sea when it comes to the struggle in this country and the indigenous people, the settler colony here, and the fact that Africans constitute a domestic colony. That was something that was understood for a long time, and they had to kill people, arrest people to crush that recognition in this country. So it was good seeing you. And by the way, this video doesn't do you justice, comrade.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was great seeing you there. And also I wanted to give you a chance to, I know you're so disciplined with your time, but I did want to show you something that I thought you would appreciate, which is, to me, this kind of epitomizes, and I think it's fine for people to go to the No Kings rally and try to infiltrate and move it to the left, but I also see a real opportunity for doing something as an alternative. And I want to show a clip of something that I thought captured some of the limitations of the No Kings movement, if you will. So this is from the No Kings March.
Whoa. It's about our man. Don't put your hands on her. You're in a public place. News is just going to take a beautiful picture of this and paint us all as, like we're pro-humanity, pro-anti.
So this is a woman at the No Kings rally who is mad at people from Code Pink who had a Palestine flag. So no king's protests are angry at Palestine flag. Okay.
Whoa! It's about our democracy. Don't put your hands on her. You're in a public place. News is just going to take a beautiful picture of this and paint us all as, like we're
pro-humanity, pro-anti-genocide, pro-humanity.
But it's the wrong. You're at the wrong event, dude.
I don't think so.
I'm sorry.
Why do you think this is the wrong message here?
Because this is no kings. This is about the United States. It's about our democracy. Don't put that thing on.
Whoa!
It's about our
Man,
Don't
you're
put your
in
hands on her.
a public place.
Okay, don't put
You're
that
in
on
a public
me. I'm
place.
just saying.
If you don't want to talk to him, but you just went up and yelled at him. Whoa.
And by the way,
Yeah.
I just want to say that the bombs haven't stopped. I just watched 11 people get massacred this morning, and Israel has violated the ceasefire dozens of times, as we knew they would. So that's also why we're out here.
Why was that woman so hostile to you?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm just out here for humanity.
So to me, that kind of captures, this is what I know will not be happening at your
That's
rally.
right. Yes, yes, that's right. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that the whole social system rests on the foundation of colonialism. When we say colonialism, we talk about a colonial mode of production that for the first time in human history, a world economy was created of enslavement of Africans and other peoples around the world, and Palestine is a part of that struggle against the colonial mode of production. And so when people fight for Palestine, they're fighting against this the pedestal, the whole pedestal of colonialism, provides for, the no kings stuff and the wonderful stuff she's talking about America that allows her to ignore what's happening to other peoples around the world. So this colonial mode of production is parasitic and it requires extreme violence in order to maintain its status.
And we will have to have you back on to talk longer about this, because I think it's so important to talk about fascism, the intersection of fascism and colonialism, imperialism. And I wanted to leave the audience with this. While I was prepping for this, I thought of this George Jackson quote from 1972, where he says, "Settle your quarrels, come together, understand the reality of our situation, understand that fascism is already here, that people are already dying who could be saved, that generations more will live poor butchered half lives if you fail to act. Do what must be done. Discover humanity and your love and revolution."
Uhuru.
Yeah, Uhuru, yeah.
Yeah. And the woman reminds us of Che Guevara, that solidarity is about more than well-wishing,
Yeah.
but sharing the same fate, whether in victory or in defeat. Right on. Uhuru. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and have a great march. And we will link to all of we'll put all the links in so people can attend. And it sounds
Thank
really
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Katie,
you.
it was great seeing you.
You too.
All right.
Bye, Uhuru. Okay, that was great. And we are, it's like a history lesson every time you speak to Chairman Yeshtitela. We're going to have to have him on much more regularly than we have been, because his analysis is so applicable to the world, whether we're talking about NATO, Ukraine, BRICS, Gaza, the Republicans, the Democrats, the two-party system. So grateful to him and to the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. And we are, he made a great point about how it's not just Gaza, but Palestine. Palestine is occupied. And we actually, our next guest is going to speak about what's happening in Palestine, not just in Gaza, and that's an egregious, genocide in real time, but there's been a slow genocide. And you could start it, depending on your definition, you could start it with the Balfour Declaration. But I'm going to bring on, I'm very honored to have on our next guest, Zeyad Kadur, and he is the uncle of two Palestinian Americans. They're American citizens, which again, I don't value a life because it's an American citizen more than I value a life of a non-American citizen. But I think it's important to highlight this because it speaks to the criminalization of anyone who dares basically get themselves in the way of Israeli aggression and genocide. And so we're going to be speaking to Zeyad Kadur about his nephew, Mohammed Ibrahim, who is a 16-year-old who is still in an Israeli prison. And we're also going to talk to him about the tragic murder of his other nephew, Saif, who also an American citizen, who was beaten to death by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. So my condolences, of course, and welcome to the show, Zeyad.
Hey, Katie, thank you.
Of course. And so sorry about what happened to both of your nephews, one of whom was murdered and one of whom is in prison right now. And of course, you're coming on the show in large part to try to make sure that he is freed from prison.
Yeah, God willing, that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. So tell us about this, about what is happening to your nephew right now.
So it's two nephews. Their mothers are sisters. The first one, Mohammed, a 15-year-old, on February 16th, was detained in the West Bank. He stays with his mother, father, and sister. There was pounding on the door around 3:34 a.m. It was the IOF. They demanded to enter the home. The father opened the door. They asked who was staying at the house with him. He said, my son, my daughter, and my wife. They said, what's your son's name? He said, Mohammed. They said, where's his bedroom at? Of course, it's 3:34 a.m. The kid's asleep. He's a child. They entered the room. He was asleep. They picked him up out of his bed. They blindfolded him, zip tied his hands behind his back, and carried him to a military vehicle, a type of Jeep that they use over there. That was at around 4 a.m. on February 16th. Here we are over 8 months later. And that was the very last time his mother, father, or sister saw him, let alone a picture or a FaceTime call or a video visit. There has been no type of communication. They're blocking them from any type of visit.
And tell us what the crimes, and if I'm putting these in major air quotes, because as people know, the entire state of Israel is a crime. It's a war crime, and it's an occupation. But tell us, while Israel is allowed to genocide people, tell us what they kidnapped and also killed your other nephew for, like what they're claiming is the crime.
For Muhammad's situation, the 15-year-old who turned 16 in prison, his charge was rock throwing. And there's typically two charges for children. It's either social media posting or rock throwing. And most of them don't get court dates. They have what they call administrative imprisonment, where they spend 6 months to 2 years without seeing a judge. Muhammad's been 8 months, hasn't seen a judge yet. But he actually has a arraignment tomorrow at 8 a.m. if it's not delayed. So that's been going on since February. In the last 8 months, the updates we did get from the State Department was pretty scary news. For example, his weight loss. It was a quarter of his weight, then a third. You're talking about over 35 pounds. Scabies from the lack of, soap and shampoo and clean laundry and things like that. No sunlight. Very weak. No communication with his family, like I said before. But in July, unfortunately, his cousin, his mom's sister's son, 20-year-old Sayfollah Musallet, was visiting his mother overseas from Tampa. He's an ice cream shop owner. And he was ambushed by Israeli settlers on his father's land. And they beat him to death with rocks and sticks. While they were beating him to death, a call went out to the ambulances saying that, there's an ambush, there's some kids here who are getting injured. Our next door neighbor overseas, Mohammed Ibrahim, was shot in the back, and the bullet exited his abdomen. At the same time, Sayfollah, an American, a 20-year-old American, was beaten to death, but the ambulances were blocked by the IOF. It's on record that it was blocked for over 2 hours and 30 minutes. Sayfollah took his last breath 5 minutes before getting to the ambulance. And when they got him to the ambulance, the settlers attacked the ambulance, and the ambulance was destroyed. The windshield, the driver was hurt. Um, you know. So, here we have two kids, two American kids whose mothers are sisters, but one was beaten to death, and the settlers are still there today. They are still there at the same area where Sayfollah was killed. None of them have been arrested. Complete impunity. At the same time, they're saying that Muhammad is guilty for standing next to a couple of other kids that when they expected one of them or suspected one of them to throw a rock. So these are all alleged crimes, but the same settlers who killed his cousin are still free for actually killing somebody, but standing next to somebody throwing a rock is some major threat to Israeli civilians or population.
And I just wanted to show an image of your late nephew who was murdered. Here he is. Here's Safe. And here he is with his family. And it's just for the crime basically of having a Palestinian family, like coming from a Palestinian family. That's basically was his death sentence.
He was an American on vacation. He was there for about a month. He was supposed to leave. His flight got delayed during the Israeli-Iran conflict. He had a new reservation. Just I think 6 days later, he was supposed to be back.
And of course, our politicians say if you touch an American, you're going to be harmed, right? You won't. If you harm an American, there'll be consequences.
So we've been hearing that for 8 months. Our biggest concern is Americans abroad. Our biggest, position for the U.S. State Department is that we ensure that all Americans are safe overseas. But I could be the first one to vouch for you. That's not true. It's not all Americans. It's particular Americans that they care about more than others. I can give you a pretty good example. I think Amanda Knox, the Italy case. I think there was an American prisoner a few years ago in North Korea. If you recall, I think Dennis Rodman was sent to North Korea and negotiated with the North Koreans, and they, just the other day, a few Americans were in a Venezuelan prison, and you see the relationships with those countries. The Russia, North Korea, Venezuela. It's not the best diplomacy going on, right? With the WNBA basketball player that was in Russia, if you recall. And none of these were children. These are all adults who were charged with crimes. Muhammad has not been charged, and he's a child, and he's an American. But for the last 8 months, he's not American enough because of his Palestinian DNA, because of the control that these lobbyists have over our Congress and particularly our White House right now. But more importantly, we live in a state where two high-ranking officials have a great relationship with the Israeli administration, Marco Rubio and Governor DeSantis, who together flew back 1,500 Israeli Americans on chartered flights, and whatever was left over, they chartered a ferry and took them from the Israeli coast to Cyprus or Greece and then brought them home. So you're talking about 1,500 people. They couldn't add one more because, his name is Muhammad. I think if his name was Moshe Abraham, he wouldn't be there. And just the other day, Marco Rubio was present in Israel, and a reporter asked him about the release of an Israeli prisoner, and there was a lot of background noise he couldn't hear properly. And he said, "We heard that President Trump is considering releasing a Palestinian prisoner named Marwan Barghouti." And Secretary Rubio couldn't hear him, and he said, "Who? I can't hear you." And the guy asked the question again. He said, "The U.S. and the president are asking for, the release of this Palestinian prisoner." And before finishing and saying the man's name, Secretary Rubio said, "Oh, you mean the American? Well, we're trying to work on that through our diplomacy and through our embassy and our consulate services." Well, there's only one American currently in a prison, and that's our nephew, Muhammad. So, the double standard is real. The retaliation in the West Bank for speaking up is just as real. during the prisoner exchange, Muhammad was not on the list. He
Right.
wasn't part of the deal. So, as a family, you're saying to us for 8 months, Muhammad's not American enough. We didn't do anything about it. But on the day of the prisoner exchange, he wasn't from Gaza enough. He was from the West Bank.
Mm.
So you see, we're kind of like in no man's land. And we're working on it. We're doing our part as a family, trying to help out any way we can. That's kind of how me and you met today. But we've been on a couple of delegations to DC. We met with a lot of senators, and Senator Van Hollen and Merkley led a congressional letter addressed to the administration, specifically naming Ambassador Huckabee and Secretary Rubio and helping Muhammad. And we have other forms that we're trying to use, not so directly through the government, but I guess you could kind of call it under the table things that people who might be able to reach out to this person of influence that might help. And we're doing everything we can. And hats off to all the congressmen and the senators and congresswomen who stood up and are sincerely trying to help. And after we finish the situation, we have something to say to the other ones who didn't. We'll give fair credit and recognize the ones who helped, but we're also going to come back and call out the ones who didn't, starting right here in Florida, the ones closest to us who are refusing to help.
Yeah. So we actually have you sent us some videos. I think we have the Marco Rubio video. We also have a Tammy Bruce video. This is from the State Department. Let's play that Marco Rubio video, and then we can play the Tammy Bruce video. And then actually, before we do that, though, let's play a video that you sent us of Muhammad. Here he is. Tell us what this is. Well, yeah, I wanted to see it. Okay, so tell us what's happening here.
So Muhammad is the one with the striped shirt, the Adidas striped shirt.
Yeah.
He's carrying his little first cousin. That's Sayfollah's little brother, the one that was killed from Tampa. So this is the people that they are telling you don't matter. These are the people who are telling you they're not American enough. This is the one that they want to label as a stone thrower with the intent to harm. This is a petite 15-year-old. As you can see, Muhammad does not look like your average 15-year-old. And this is the time where kids have that growth spurt, between age 16 and 18. Instead, he's malnutritioned, he's starved, skin infection, God knows mentally how he's doing.
Right.
And who knows what he looks like because they're not letting us see him.
Right. So here, let's just take a look at this video. And how old was he when that video was taken?
I think he was probably around 13.
It's just like hard. I mean, it's so hard.
About a year and a half before he was taken. Yeah.
Right. We also have, I believe, Brad, do you have another photo of him? Or sorry, guys, we've been juggling a lot of tech things, so apologies if you don't. We also have I did want to show, if possible, another. Hold on,
that's a call to action. There's information there for whoever would like to help.
Yeah. Actually, I have some of these additional photos in my screen that, and we'll put that in there. But let me just share the screen. 1 second. I have and everyone, thank you so much for your patience. We had some tech issues. So here's another photo. I'm just going to show of Muhammad, so people just have a face. So this is he's now 16. He's in jail. He's lost a third of his body weight. Has scabies.
That's a very recent picture before he was taken.
And then we also have this photo. Let me just share this one. And here he is with another younger relative, and it's who's also she's. So who's this?
That's his niece. So Muhammad's sister had a baby, and he was able to meet her.
And she's adorable.
Thank you.
What did Saif want to do with his life? People become these, there's that great organization, We Are Not Numbers, that Rafat Al-Arir started. Ahmed Al-Nawouk is involved with it. And that's such an important thing to remember. We are not numbers. And these are people, right, with stories. So tell us what Saif wanted to do with his life, what he was doing with his life, and then what Mohammed's passions and interests are.
So Saif recently inquired in an ice cream store near USF College in Tampa. It was a failing business. Him and Muhammad's brother and their other cousin, three young men between the ages of 19 and 20, decided, they wanted to work. So their father said, you know what, instead of each one looking for a job, let's try and invest in them and do something. They're three young men. They got good values and they're responsible. So they all pitched in and bought the kids this business. They turned the business around. It's one of the most viral ice cream shops in Tampa. They serve like a Amish type of ice cream, a more natural, and they mixed in like the Arabic Dubai menu, Dubai chocolate stuff to it, and influencers started flocking to the store. The place went viral. The kids were working 7 days a week. Sayfollah was ready for a break, so each three of the kids said, you know what, you go home, visit your family for a month, and when you get back, it'll be my turn. And when he gets back, and he took the trip. His flight got delayed while he was overseas. He was checking on his father's land. They heard that there was people destroying the trees and putting up makeshift like camps, trying to claim, this is Israeli land now, because this happened in the lands of the Palestinian Authority, in an area that his father has a deed to. This is his family's land. I guess while he was there was some type of ambush. The IDF was on one side, the settlers were on the side, and they kind of sandwiched in on the kids. Tear gas, live rounds of, and two kids died that day, Mohammed Ibrahim, a Palestinian, and Sayfollah, who were born on the same day. These two kids who were murdered, they were born on the same day 20 years ago, and they died on the same day. And Kamal, Sayfollah's father, was here in Tampa covering for Sayfollah at the shop so he could go on his vacation. The Muhammad's father, Rizk Shalabi, waited for Camel to come from the States. And he said, our children passed away together. They were born together. I wasn't going to bury my son until you buried your son. So now they're buried next to each other. But on the flip side of it, Sayfollah's mother, her sister, which is Muhammad's mom, is hoping that her son comes home safe and healthy and doesn't have to be in the shoes, that her sister's in. It's a sad situation. Muhammad was supposed to be here this summer working at the ice cream shop because he was going to be 16. He wanted to have a summer job for a few months and try to get his driver's permit. Just like any 16-year-old that you could probably imagine,
Right. That's just so awful. And how are his parents doing, by the way? Saif's parents.
They're trying to handle it in different ways. The father spent 4 days with me. We were with IMEU and CCR. Shout out to them. They held our hands and they walked us through the halls of Washington D.C., knocked doors and meetings, and they did a lot for us. Me and Kamal and another U.S. father named Hafid Abdul-Jabbar. His son was a 17-year-old named Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar from New Orleans. His son was shot in the back of the head by a sniper while sitting in the front seat of his car. So it was us three. I was there on behalf of my nephew, Sayfollah's father, Kamal, Hafid, another American, but we're with two other American families. Aisha Noor, the Turkish American from Washington, her sister Ozden, and Aisha, the late Aisha Noor's husband, Hamid, also came from Washington. But before all of this, it was Cindy and Craig Corey, which is Rachel Corey's parents, which was who she died by a bulldozer 23 years ago in Gaza. So, we had IMEU and the CCR helping us out tremendously. And we also had people who've been doing it for a year and a half, and all the way, 23 years ago. And talking about trailblazers, the Corys, they knew every hallway, every stairwell, every shortcut to the next building. I think we had 17 meetings in 3 days, which is a lot between the different buildings. But God bless them. They were our moral support. And all four families of Americans who were killed overseas never made any meeting or visit about their own. It was always about, our kids are gone, but you guys can save Muhammad, and maybe we'd feel a little bit better that our children didn't die in vain if this kid could come home to
Yeah.
his family, because they already lost one a few weeks ago or a few months ago, but you guys can still save this one. And I think any father or mother could connect to that. But
Yeah.
seeing a family advocating for 23 years, it also prepares you to not have so much faith, but you kind of push yourself and say, well, what else can you do?
Right.
What else can you do to these people who are literally um, occupied just as much as Palestine in DC?
Oh, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, they are occupied. Yeah. It's Zionized and occupied.
Yeah, and not all of them. I'll be the first to point out there's still some good people. There's still some good mothers and fathers who have kids and can't imagine being in our shoes. But for the most part, as they don't give any damn at all.
Right. I also want to show you this in contrast to what you're saying. Israeli lawmakers demand release of convicted killers of Palestinians. Settlers MP says no moral justification for keeping Jews in prison, including killers of the Dabashi family and teenager Mohammed Abu Kader. 55 Israeli ministers, and this is from October 28th. This is from today. 55 Israeli ministers and members of parliament have urged President Isaac Herzog to pardon Jewish Israeli prisoners convicted of murdering Palestinians. The lawmakers, including Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, have called for 25 of these prisoners to be granted amnesty. Over the past few days, the Israeli government has been releasing thousands of terrorists, the letter said, referring to the recent prisoner exchange between Israel and Hamas. Our signatures in no way constitute agreement with their actions. While these Jews languish in prison, leaving suffering families and sometimes even those who were victims of terrorism, they see terrorists, including despicable murderers, making their way to freedom with their people and their families. So there you have it. They would like killers to be released. And this reminds me of, something that we cover a lot on the show, which is the fact that when the rape was documented, a rape of not a prisoner, a hostage, when a rape of a Palestinian hostage was captured on video, the soldiers were behind shields. So you didn't see it, but it was done. It was clear enough that it was a rape that's how Israeli media reported on it. And when that happened and they started questioning some of the rapists, the response in Israel was to have protests, have riots, which, okay, it would be great if they were riots against the rape, but no, they were right to rape protests. People took to the streets to demand the freedom of these rapists. So it's a similar thing that we're seeing here now with these Israeli politicians demanding the release of killers. Murderers
and that's the right way to address it in my eyes. The politicians or the Zionist movement. I feel like we shouldn't mention their religion.
Oh, I didn't. That was a weird.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. You addressed it the right way because a lot of Jewish people have been helping us, and the way our children are taken from us and the way our lands are taken from us, the core of their religion has been hijacked too. And used to spread all of this stuff. And, we mentioned the impunity. On the flip side, the prison that Muhammad's in, and in a few hours, his court case starts, I think the conviction rate is like 99.8%. Because it's a civilian, it's a child, and he's in a military prison, a military prosecutor, a military interrogator, and a military judge. So, everything's kind of stacked against you. And for most Palestinians, they can't even make it across the border to go to that prison, let alone to send him the right help, you know?
Yeah, and what can you tell us about the life in the West Bank? Because there's obviously justifiably a lot of focus on Gaza, and while the eyes are on Gaza as they should be, often what's not being reported on, and I should be clear that there's a lot of stuff in Gaza that's not reported on, but what's happening in the West Bank is not covered as much. So what do
Yeah.
you want people to know about that and
So
about the town that your family's in?
So as of right now, it's olive oil harvest season, where they pick the olives and they go and they take them to these oil producing factories where they squeeze the olive and the oil comes out, and that's the biggest natural resource that we have in Palestine. From thousands of years ago, these are Roman olive trees that were since the early Romans in Palestine. So right now, a lot of people, a lot of farmers, a lot of families can't even get to their land because the settlers are ambushing them, and they're encamping there. And the IOF is protecting the settlers and saying to the Palestinians, "You guys can't go to your farms because it's not safe for you." They suddenly care about our safety while the olives are getting stolen. Today, a family picked their olives from our village. And as they're picking it, they got maced. The tires on their vehicle were cut, so they couldn't leave. And they grabbed the olives after they did all the hard work, put them in their truck, and took off with them. And just a few days ago, independent journalist Japer Nathaniel from New York, who's Jewish, and he's staying with our family overseas. He's there doing a story on Sayfollah and Tawfiq Abdul-Jabbar and Muhammad. He went with some locals, and he was attacked. He barely got out alive, but a 55-year-old woman from the village was clubbed, and after she fell unconscious, they continued beating her, and he got it all on video.
Yeah.
So it's not it's happening to anybody who's against them. Our village in itself and our surrounding villages around us, east of Ramallah, our village is somewhere in the 70 percentile of American. So there's around 7,000 to 8,000 people in our village, but there's over 16,000 in the States combined. And people from our village coming to America since the early 40s.
Wow. Well, we interviewed Japer Nathaniel on Useful Idiots, and we definitely want to have him back. I just went to look at some of his videos, and this is, people may know I'm a dog person. I just turned around because my little doggy is making noise, but
Yeah,
I want to show. Yeah, this is an adorable video. Let's see. Let's show this video. Let me just, it says some good news for a change. Farmers at Hakoritna farm in Tukam. How do you, I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering this.
It's Hakoritna, which
Hakoritna,
means our garden,
wow.
Farms.
And how do you say this next word? Tulkarm?
Tulkarm.
Tulkarm.
That's a city outside of the Nablus and Jenin area called Tulkarm, where one of the refugee camps this year was brutally assaulted.
So he writes some good news for a change. Farmers at
Hakoritna
in Tulkarm rescued puppies who'd fallen down a well, and now they're eating fresh vegetables. Watch his little tail at the end. And so I have to show this because it's just like, hold on. Look at this, like, so cute.
Yeah.
I know it's ridiculous, but I just love puppies and dogs, and it's just so cute. And it's like, it's just like these people, the ones who like rescued this dog. As you know, is just, they're all presented as threats and terrorists. It's inconceivable. And it's just, you never see stuff like this.
Katie, look at a human being, trying to save a dog, right?
Yeah.
like just a guy there, so happy that somebody saved a dog.
Yeah.
Imagine a human life, imagine a baby, imagine a 15-year-old American in a prison, imagine, starving children in Gaza. Why does this have to be any politics involved? Why can't we talk about humanitarian aid, medicine, rebuilding, you know, put everything else on the side, just go back to being human.
Yeah.
When we talk about Muhammad or Sayfollah, we're not talking about, borders or anything else. We're just talking about these two kids. The family's been through enough. Everybody do their part and bring Muhammad home. A 15-year-old should be with his mom and dad, not in a prison without any charges.
Yeah. Yes. And one other thing I have to bring up is that we now know a U.S. colonel who investigated Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh's 2022 killing by an Israeli soldier concluded it was intentional, but his boss undermined that conclusion for political reasons. And that's an article that we know about that. The New York Times reported on that. So I have to show some. I just have to show Brad. Can you show these videos just because are these I think I think Jasper is with your family right now, right? So
Let me see.
let's
I can
see.
tell you if it is or
Okay,
not.
Yeah. Children, let's see. Let me know if these are let me do a screen share. Stop screen. Share screen, Japer Nathaniel. Okay. Here we go. Let me know if this is
No, so that's in the Hebron Hills when he
okay.
first got there. That's a Bedouin family who's been enduring land theft, livestock theft, and constant harassment. Jasper spent a few days there playing with the kids and seeing what they were going through, and he was sleeping on the floor, just the way they did.
Wow. Yeah, it's I mean, it's like Jasper's feed is just amazing because you get to see these adorable scenes. And then you also get to see, I mean, he's capturing atrocious attacks on settler violence. And he just posted one where he let's see, when I do this, do you still see what I'm showing, Brad, when I do that, or does it disappear?
I see it.
Okay. He posted a video. Hold on one second. Let me just where is this one? Of a settler attack. Where is it? This one is like really, I think, important to watch because it shows we see the forces colluding. He posted a video where you see a settler and a soldier. Here we go. Here, Brad.
Katie, I removed it just because I think if you switch tabs, you need to share a different tab.
Great. Yeah. I just thank you. I just sent you a link.
Okay.
If you could show that, or I can show it. Actually, I have it, which is easier. I think it's probably since I'm doing this now, right? I can probably.
Otherwise, I just need like 30 seconds unless you want to do it.
I'll do it because I have it right here. Okay, so here is settlers and soldiers joined forces to beat up an older Palestinian farmer in Nahalin near Bethlehem. So who exactly is going to stop the violence when they're all on the same team? This was sent to me. Don't know who to credit yet.
So you see the settlers hitting him in front of his family, like an embarrassment to him, and the soldiers are just waiting for the Palestinian to defend himself so they could arrest him.
Right.
Which
and
is
there they are attacking him, restraining him. There's his wife or mother or whatever. Yeah. These, I mean, absolute cowards. Look at these cowards. This cowardly settler who attacks someone, then he dares defend himself. And then look, I mean, this is such an outrage. 3 soldiers and 1 settler.
Oh, there's more than that, Katie. That's just what you're seeing. You don't see who's on top of the rocks.
Oh. What, more settlers?
More soldiers. Making
more
sure
soldiers?
that nobody's watching it.
I mean, look how disgusting this is. I mean, it's unbelievable. And humiliation is part of it. I mean, this is a big part of dehumanization and genocide. And we saw this, I remember the great and late Renee Lichtman, who was a Holocaust survivor who we interviewed for this document. Well, first we had him on the show, and then we interviewed him in person for this documentary we're making on Holocaust survivors who are protesting the genocide in Gaza. And he brought up how much, Israelis learned from the Nazis. He said that, humiliation is such a part of it. And he saw that when he went to Israel. He reminded him of the way the Nazis would pull on, before they were it was an industrialized genocide, the pogroms and harassment, and they would pull on the old Jewish men's beards.
Yeah. And what the German government didn't learn from the first genocide, look how they're staunchly supporting. Once again, look at this is ridiculous,
unbelievable, and they beat the crap out of people protesting.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's disgusting. Yeah, and they support Israel, and then in their own streets, these people who are supposed to learn from this, they beat the crap out of obviously pro-Palestine protesters, but also, disproportionately. The people arrested are Jews in Germany because there are Jews who are outspoken on Palestine. And I don't bring that up because I care more if they're Jewish, but it just, wait, guys, you don't even know how to do it right. Like you're pretending to care about Jews. But if you're a Jew who cares about Palestinians, you're the wrong kind of Jew. Yeah.
They're smearing the Jewish name.
Yeah. It's really disgusting. Well, you've been so generous with your time. Any final words that you want to share? And of course, we'll update people on what happened. And
of course,
your whole family is in our thoughts. And I'm so sorry about, the what happened to Sayfollah. And I'm so sorry about what's happening to Mohammed. And hopefully he will be released and nothing will bring Saif back. So I'm just so sorry about that. But hopefully, his family, your family can take some solace in I'm hoping that Mohammed gets released.
Yeah, I hope that Mohammed comes home. I hope we get some good news today, their time overseas. At the same time, it's, these are, like I said earlier, they're a couple of drops in the ocean of what's going on in this occupation. It's not just about Sayfollah. It's not just about Mohammed.
Right.
Like we said, the Corys from 23 years ago, Ozdin and Hamid with their sister Aisha Noor, Hafid of the Jabbar with his son Tawfiq, Kamal with Sayfollah. That's just the American part that I'm mentioning to you. Right. You mentioned Mohammed Abu Khader, who was killed. I think a year or two before that, his cousin was beaten brutally and came back home to Tampa, black and blue. I think the kid was like 13 or 14 at the time. Shireen Abu Akla. So everybody, all these American names or all these American citizens who are killed, we have to understand this is not becoming random. It's more systematic. It's a message that if you're here, we don't care what passport you carry.
Right.
As long as the people who make that passport keep sending us weapons and money and supporting what we do, that's what they care about. But they don't care about us as Americans. Our own officials aren't doing their jobs, what they were elected for. We should hold them responsible. But the bigger picture is, we want Mohammed to come home, and hopefully that'll be the start of other kids getting out and other people, coming home to their families.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll put all the links in and let us know what people can do now and after tomorrow. I mean, again, hopefully we'll hear good news.
I'll keep you posted, Katie. For sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much
for having me.
Of course.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. I mean, heartbreaking, infuriating. I can't. Just seeing the faces of Mohammed and Saif, and then seeing the footage of that monster of a settler and those monster soldiers attacking an unarmed Palestinian who just wants to live in peace. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just the hypocrisy and mendacity of Western. The Western world is governments. I want to be clear, the elites, not the people, is astounding. So I'm just so incredibly grateful to Zeyad for coming on the show, and I'm also so incredibly sorry for what he and his family are going through. And as he said, it's systemic, right? We just had the privilege of speaking to one of their relatives, but this is systemic. And speaking of systemic, we have someone who's going to put this into context for us. The great historian, Sam Biagetti, who is the host of the great podcast Historysplaining. Welcome, Sam. Historian-splaining. I always get confused because on Twitter it's history-splaining, right?
No, it's historian-splaining.
Oh, really? All right, sorry. All right.
But sometimes other people also misspell it, so it's, it's been distorted over the years. But yeah, it's a great pleasure to be on your show as always, Katie. And I know you just flew back from Istanbul late last night, so you're really a beast, as they say, doing this long show tonight. And yeah, I want to say it's very harrowing hearing, from people like Zeyad about his nephews, and you talked about how there's actually a pattern of Israel abducting, imprisoning, and sometimes killing U.S. citizens. It's really not even that rare. You mentioned names like Rachel Corrie and Shireen Abu Akleh. You can also go all the way back to the USS Liberty in 1967. Israel killed 34 Americans. And it's a very little known history. And I think it's illustrative of something that I want to maybe help understand here, which is why support for Israel and the backing of Israel seems to take precedence over absolutely everything, even including protecting U.S. citizens. Why is this so critical? And I think the reason really is because it's so central to the whole ideology, the whole mindset of this so-called liberal international order or US-led international order. Israel is kind of a central symbol of that whole order. And as I'll try to explain in a minute, you can see it as kind of the first fruits of the post-World War II order. And really globalist systems, globalist philosophies, globalist systems, they tend to need some central symbols. They need a central focal point, a place that they see as sort of the center of the world. And they need a kind of project, a mission, right? And a lot of globalist ideologies are missionary, and I'm going to mention Catholic missionism, Protestant missionism. Israel is sort of the mission of the US-led global order, I think. And I want to compare it to previous globalist systems going all the way back to the Middle Ages. And I think you can make sense of Israel and how important it is as a kind of modern day crusader state, right? It serves a very similar role to the crusader states in the medieval global worldview. So,
yeah. And also, what is globalist, by the way? Because I can't help hear Alex Jones, globalist, when I hear that term. But yeah, what's the anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist use of that word?
Well, I use it in a very broad sense, and I have a slide about it, but we can maybe we'll glance at it later.
So you can. I'll hand it over to you because you as a historian and a history splainer, although it's historian splainer. Historian splaining have a lot of explaining to do. So I'll let you take it away, and then you can get to that.
But I'll try to be brief about it. And I made some slides which we can glance at, but we don't have to go by those. But I'm using globalist basically in the broad, open sense to mean a scheme through which you understand and view the world, and a belief system about how the world ought to work and where authority ought to be in that global system. And the current one that people have been discussing and sort of fretting about is the US-led or liberal international world order, right? This is the thing that people now are often saying is in crisis, it's falling apart, which, may be true. But this is only the latest globalism. There have been other globalisms through the centuries before this one, and each one is a little different. But I think that if you look at them carefully, all of them have basically a religious base, right? There's always a sort of religious belief system at the foundation of a globalist order, right? Because how do you conceive of the whole world having a single authority, a single purpose, a single moral system? And so I'm going to talk maybe for a few minutes about the medieval Christian globalist order, which, didn't really control that much of the world, but it was a way of conceiving of the world. Then the Catholic Jesuit globalist system, then the Protestant missionary system, and then this liberal international system, the one we're which I think really grows out of the Protestant missionary globalist ideology, globalist world system, right? So each one kind of builds on the last and adjusts it. It's sort of, you could say, dialectical. But just to look at the things I threw together here, which maybe will clarify a bit, if we can, thank you. What's the matter with the global order? Everyone's fretting and wringing their hands. There's this US-led global or international order. It goes by different names, and there's not a lot of clarity about exactly what it is, but everyone agrees it's in crisis, it seems, right? So let's see if I can, I think I can advance these myself. Yeah. So people point to recent events like Brexit, the EU can be seen as part of this global order. So Britain, a major country, leaving it is a sign of this sort of breakdown crisis. Trump, right? Need I say more? The Russian invasion of Ukraine, and particularly NATO's failure to stop it. And also BRICS, this sort of formation of this new alignment of new power centers kind of on the periphery or outside this US-centered order, right? So these are all things people see as signs of crisis, right?
I love the BRICS integration. Okay.
Yeah. And there have been books recently sort of weighing, is this a good thing? What can we look forward to, right? What comes next? So there have been these recent books by Philip Pilkington and Philip Cunliffe. So one is more kind of abstract, global liberalism is falling apart, and he tends to think that's a good thing, right? Maybe not unalloyed good, but he does support it. And also Philip Cunliffe, right, who argues, well, we're going to return to a world of nations and national interests, away from this sort of integrated global internationalism. Okay, but what is it? It goes by all these different names, as we said, right? The rules-based order, this is sort of a current term. There are also these older terms from the Cold War, the democratic world, the free world, right? You may have heard the president of the United States is the leader of the free world, right? Which is amazingly presumptuous when you think about it, right? As if one country's leader is somehow the leader for everyone in the world who's free, right? It's a very imperial kind of mindset, right? And there's debate about, well, was there this moment sort of just after the Cold War in the 1990s, a unipolar moment, right? When really the only power center that mattered was the United States. And I'm kind of skeptical about that, to what degree that's true, that it was really unipolar. But what's significant here is people thought of it that way. People thought of it as the American way has triumphed, right? American institutions, the rule of law, liberal democracy has triumphed. This is the one system that now is going to take over the whole world, right? It was the end of history. But it's not necessarily really that way on the ground. But people had this kind of moment, this triumphal moment of confidence that was the way everything was going. And now we're all kind of worried, wait, this isn't how we thought it was going to unfold. Now this edifice seems to be cracking, right? So as I would say, okay, there is this kind of global order underpinned by this globalist mindset, which is both secular and religious. And that's one of the things I want to emphasize, right? Yeah. There's a secular side to it and a religious side. It comes out of American Protestant millenarianism, the idea that the US is leading the world into the millennium, right? The final age of history. US expansion, so that's expansion from the Atlantic across to the Pacific through North America. The world wars, particularly the US-British alliance, right? And this so-called Atlanticism, this idea that there's a single civilization that embraces the US and Britain, and that is going to lead the world. So that comes out of the world wars and the responses to fascism, World War II, and the Holocaust, and the moral and religious crisis that created, and the sense that we needed a new morality to prevent something like the Holocaust from happening again, basically.
Right.
So you can see this, just briefly, I'll point out the Atlantic Charter. So this was not really a treaty. It was just an unofficial agreement between the US and Britain, 1941, where basically Roosevelt and the US was agreeing to support Britain against the Nazis and against fascism. And they're already, even before the US is in the war, they're already projecting what is the world going to look like after the destruction of Nazi tyranny. We will see established a peace which will afford to all nations the means of dwelling in safety within their own boundaries, and which will afford assurance that all men in the lands may live. Let's see if I can just, can't quite read it. Live in freedom from want and fear. So you can see that last line kind of echoes Franklin Roosevelt's For Freedom speech, right? So they're sort of projecting this American liberal democratic New Deal philosophy to the world. Sounds fine. A lot of us would support that. Also within their own boundaries. So this is reimagining the world as like a jigsaw puzzle made up of nation states with clear borders. And this is significant because a lot of the world here was still imperial, right? It was still colonized by Europe. But now America is sort of projecting itself out into the world, right? We're all going to be these separate independent nation states with clear borders. And then we will have these rules and bodies to ensure peace among these nation states that make up the globe. And just briefly, so there are basically three components to this global order that then is laid out after World War II. There's the political, which is the most obvious, right? The UN, United Nations. You can think of it almost like the United States of the world, right? And it's headquartered, in New York, right?
Wow.
It's created totally in America as kind of America projecting itself out, right? Human rights, right? This goes back to the rights of man, the American and French revolutions. This is the new sort of moral code of this new order. And then meanwhile, you have to note, really de facto, there are also US spheres of control and influence, right? So it's not really total independence for everyone. It's understood the US is the hegemon of Latin America, and no other power is allowed to get involved, right? And that goes all the way back. It starts with the Monroe Doctrine all the way back in the 1820s, and it only intensifies through the years, right? The US is the one country with the right to interfere with the sovereignty of other countries in Latin America. And then there's NATO, right? People talk about NATO as an alliance. It's not really just an alliance. It's a military organization, right? With its own military bases, its own troops, its own command structure. And it basically is set up to control Western Europe and to make sure the US is the hegemonic power in Western Europe, right? So there are these big carve-outs, you could say, right, of US spheres of influence within this sort of global world of independent states, right?
Right.
The economic, I won't get into it too much. Other people can speak to that better than I, but you have the US dollar is the international trading currency. Everybody's pegged to the US dollar. You have these trading and financial institutions, the IMF and the World Bank. Those are all created at Bretton Woods, 1944. But then there's also this religious underpinning, which people don't necessarily talk about so much, right? If you talk to IR people, this isn't so much part of the story, but this all is conceivable because of American civic millennialism, this idea that goes back to the colonial age, that Americans are leading the world to a new millennium, a new Jerusalem, a sort of utopian future. And this is linked then to Zionism and Israel, right? The actual regathering of the Jews in Palestine, which has long also been prophesied in Christianity and has been emphasized in Protestantism, that is also a step towards the millennium, is the regathering of the Jews into Palestine and the reestablishment of Israel. So Zionism is tied completely in.
Oops. Did he freeze?
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah, I guess it's just,
okay.
yeah, it breaks at moments.
Okay. Yeah. It was Mossad jumped in.
I would believe it.
Yeah.
But the sort of overarching concept then of this whole this whole religious side to the U.S. Global order is this idea of Judeo-Christian, right? The Judeo-Christian heritage, tradition, ethics, whatever it is, right? So the U.S. and Israel are sort of the two poles, right? Or the core and the outpost of this supposed Judeo-Christian order, right? And this ties together Zionism with this Protestant millennialism.
By the way, someone wrote IR what? So IR is international relations.
International relations, right? So that's a field that's taught in universities, right?
Like our dear friend of the show, John Mearsheimer.
Yes, who I am influenced by very much, because part of what I'm hoping to clarify here is how much of a liability Israel is in terms of tangible U.S. interests, right? Israel is not that helpful. They don't have natural resources. They cause problems and conflict in the whole Middle Eastern region. But the U.S. will not give up this tie to Israel for ideological reasons, right? It's kind of the keystone of this whole worldview.
Yeah, and I wish I bring this up all the time. In fact, I'm just going to remove this and we can bring it back up. But this is a question I always ask people, which is it the lobby or is it imperialism or is it both? And the brilliant Craig McIver, human rights attorney, and also kind of human rights intellectual, who resigned from the UN over its failure to deal effectively with Gaza. He says it's really both. It's not either or. And he's someone who talks about one of, I think, his great contributions. I mean, so many, but is how imperialism is never mentioned in like UN discourse. And I do think that it often gets dismissed, the non-lobby function of not the non-lobby function, the motives besides the lobby that the forces that compel the West to support Israel besides the lobby.
Yeah, well, and the pro-Israel lobby is very, very powerful, but part of why they are so powerful and so effective is that they tap into these very deep American beliefs about America and about our own role and importance in the world, right? Israel is kind of a reflection or an outward projection of America and how we think of ourselves, right? If it wasn't that, then the lobby wouldn't be nearly so successful as they are, right? And I think that they sense that, maybe if only on an intuitive level, they understand that they're speaking to this American self-conception that we are the leaders of the world, we are leading the world into a new era. And we'll see in a minute some quotes that illustrate this, of how Americans think of themselves this way in these religious terms, really.
Great. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we can, so some obvious things that a lot of us have probably heard, right? There's this U.S.-led global order, and it's defined against certain enemies. First, fascism in the 30s and 40s and during the war. Then communism, right? There's the free world and the communist world. Then Islam, right? Really, after the end of the Cold War, it becomes us against the Islamic world is how this global system defines itself, right? And you may notice, Israel is conveniently at the forefront of all of these, really, right? You can see the initial creation of Israel as a response to the Holocaust, right? That's how it's cast. That's how it's framed. Then communism, right? They're our beachhead for the West and liberal democracy to stop communism in the Middle East. Then Islam, right? And that's how neoconservatives see it, as right. There's this civilizational battle between the West and Islam, and Israel is our beachhead in the East, right? Okay, so this order is in crisis, right? Say we grant that there at least is a crisis of confidence, right? There's internal disillusionment, disaffection, which has led to these things like Brexit, and to, you could say, anti-globalist governments coming into places like Hungary, right? So you have countries, some at the core, some at the periphery, where the public is disenchanted. They're disenchanted with the EU, increasingly with NATO as well. There's the crisis of Ukraine, And then there's the crisis of Israel. So this is a whole problem unto itself. Why does the elite stick with Israel through all of this, through thick and thin? Well, as we mentioned, okay, it's the first fruits of this post-war order, right? And it gets its first bit of legitimacy as a state from the UN, from this partition plan in 1947, right? That's only provisional. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't keep the peace. Then what really gets it international recognition is the US, right? Truman, the United States, immediately out of the gate says, we're recognizing Israel. Also, at the same time, it has this religious significance, right? It's a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, of the regathering of the Jews. And so this is why I'd say it's the keystone of this whole global system, because it's the linchpin that ties the two sides together, right? The secular, liberal, humanist, internationalist, and the religious, right? It gives you both at once, neatly tied together with this name Israel, which is this incredibly bold move, right? To call a modern state Israel, this ancient name rooted in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And to claim to be somehow both a modern liberal state and the recreation of this ancient kingdom of the Jews, of the Israelites at the same time. And in this way, I think it's very much like a modern day crusader state, right? It sort of creates the grand unifying mission for this whole weird hodgepodge system. Okay, and as we said, okay, I think it's central to our modern day globalism, right? And as I said, globalism, I'm just using to mean a world picture embracing the whole known world, humankind, right? And that has a value system. How should the world work, and where is authority located in the world, right? And our current globalism is just one, right? There have been others previously. And curiously, as you'll see, Jerusalem and the Holy Land is pretty persistently at the center of them. Even as they change in other ways, Jerusalem is always there at the center. So these are just a few others that I'll mention and describe briefly. The medieval Christian globalism, that's what the Crusades come out of.
Mm-hmm.
Catholic Jesuit globalism, Protestant missionary globalism, and then this modern international order. Okay, so what you're seeing here is one of the oldest world maps ever found in the world.
Wow.
It's from the 800s. And it's the earliest map that's ever been found that has the name Europe on it. So what you see here is Mare Oceanum. That's the encircling ocean sea. Then you have 3 continents: Asia, Africa, Europe. Okay, and each of them has a name attached to it that's one of the 3 sons of Noah. So for Asia, there's Shem, Africa, Ham, and for Europe, Japhet.
Wow.
So the story that the medievals believed in, it's sort
and where
of
is this from? Where was this created?
So this map is from the St. Gall manuscript, which is in the library of the Monastery of St. Gall in Switzerland.
Okay, and it was created by
monks, monk scribes
who lived in what we now
know as Switzerland.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, would have been the Holy Roman Empire,
right?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
So this is sort of the medieval world picture, right? 3 continents, each one, and it was divided up between the 3 sons of Noah. So after the great flood, the ark lands, the people come out, they divide up, they assign the 3 continents to the 3 sons. And so they think that the peoples on these 3 continents are descended from these 3 sons, right? So this is sort of the order of the world. And in the middle is the Mediterranean Sea. That's the sort of empty space in the middle that they're all arranged around, right? So it's this sort of loose world picture. Later on, it gets more filled in and elaborated. So this is the Beatus map from France from the mid-1000s, so a couple hundred years later. And what you're seeing here is east at the top. This is why it's disorienting, right? East is at the top. So this is Asia. Judea is in here, or Palestine. This is the Nile River. This is Africa. And this is Europe.
Wow.
And this is the encircling ocean.
Yeah, it totally looks mid 1000s. I can tell from the technique.
from the colors, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this is the Mediterranean Sea, right? Which means middle of the world. Mediterranean Sea with the islands in it. And you have these two cities sort of facing each other.
Mediterranean, right? Duh.
Yeah, middle of the
Mediterranean,
earth.
yeah. Wow. Okay.
So you have these two cities facing each other across the sea, Rome and Jerusalem. Right. So
Wow.
Rome is the center of Roman Western civilization, of the Roman Catholic Church. And then Jerusalem, that's the holy city, right? The place where Christ was crucified and resurrected. So you have these two important symbolic centers kind of competing with each other, you could say, right? But in time, one of them wins out and becomes the center. So this is the, let's see, I have the Psalter map from England, from another couple hundred years later, from is it the 1100s? Oh, 1200s.
You can't tell. It's clearly 1260s to 70s. Come on, Sam.
Obviously. But here, so you again have the encircling ocean, the three continents, and then in the middle is Jerusalem, right? And so this is a little zoomed in circular city, the only circular city depicted this way. It's the center of the world. Everything revolves around it. Right. And then this becomes the standard from here on outward. Jerusalem is the center of the world. Europe is not. Europe is off in the lower left. Right. Wow. The center is Jerusalem. So this is the Ebstorf map from about the same period. Jerusalem at the center. Right. Perfect square city with walls and gates. And then around the edges of the map, you have the head of Christ at the top, the hands and the feet.
Wow.
So the idea is the whole world is unified, or could potentially be unified, in the body of Christ, which is the church. And the navel, this is how they describe it, the navel of the world is Jerusalem. So that's the place where the world connects to the heavens, right? So everything is facing inwards towards this holy site, this place of contact with the heavens, which is Jerusalem. So what happened? How is it that Jerusalem went from, being off to the side, competing with Rome, to being the center? It was the Crusades, right? So the Crusades are launched in 1095, and there are various justifications for these crusades. So the Pope Urban in 1095 preaches we all have to go out on crusade and retake control of Jerusalem from the Muslims. And he puts forward humanitarian reasons. He says the Christians in the East are being persecuted and there have been atrocities. People have been killed. This was true to a degree. But it was like 15, 20 years past. He was a little out of date. But when the Turks had invaded that region, there was persecution and violence against Eastern Christians. So he had this sort of humanitarian rationale, also religious. The Christians should control Jerusalem. We need to protect pilgrims who are going to this most holy place, to Jerusalem. And also there was this belief that Jerusalem had to be in Christian hands in order for Christ to return, right? So they're looking forward towards the second coming of Christ. And that can only happen if Christ can come among friends, right? So it has to be in Christian hands. Now, really, historians would say, well, those are the rationales, right? Religious, moral, humanitarian.
That cover up material interests, right?
Yeah, well,
that's the claim. I mean, I'm not saying whether, but that's, yeah.
That is the argument, and I think it's a good argument that Europe was a mess. It was very fragmented. There was lots of small wars and skirmishing. There was this whole class of knights who were trained to fight, and all they were doing was fighting each other and causing trouble. So what the Pope figured he could do is, well, let's launch this grand mission to take Jerusalem that will unify these fragmented states around the Pope, right? He'll be now the leader of the Christian West, and it will give these knights something to do. Put them on ships and send them somewhere else. So they're fighting someone else, so they're not causing trouble here at home in Europe, in the Latin West. So it had these political motives and purposes it served as well, right? But there was this great kind of ideological grandiosity to it, right? And the Crusades end up creating a series of crusader states, mostly here in the East, right? In this area that's now Israel and Palestine, Lebanon, Syria. There are these crusader states, which in some ways they're like colonies, but not. There are key differences. So they're ostensibly independent, right? So the knights who go and create these crusader states, they're French largely. They're also English, Italian, German, but they don't create French colonies or English colonies. They create these new separate states, one of them called the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And they are supposed to run themselves, right? But they're totally economically dependent on Europeans. There's constant donations, there's constant pilgrimage going to these crusader states, spending money there. So they're drains, right? This is a big difference between the crusader states and later colonies, like in the 1700s. Those were economically lucrative. If they were being run right, you would extract resources, you would extract labor. They were very lucrative. The crusader states were a big money pit, but they kept going. They kept funding them and they kept defending them because of the ideological legitimation. This is how you got prestige in the medieval Latin West, was supporting the Crusades and the crusader states. It made the whole scheme make sense, right? And it showed that you were pious, right? And you were somehow carrying out God's plan by ruling, collecting taxes, launching wars, whatever. This was the great legitimating project of it all. And it did help keep order in the Latin West. It really, it was, again, it was like a keystone of the whole system. So the Crusades eventually fail, right? These states fall apart. Jerusalem is reconquered by Muslim states. Saladin is sort of the famous, leader of the reconquest of Jerusalem.
Right. La Reconquista.
And then there's also Spain. So Spain was also declared to be a crusade. There were other crusades around different places, and
then there's that famous line about when the Muslims lost. Wait, no, who was it? They said, whose mother said to their son, "You cry for, you're crying like a woman over something you couldn't defend as a man."
That's a good question. Maybe it was Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, who was an English crusading king, and his mother
it would have been like a Spaniard. It would either been like the Spanish, like the I don't remember, either more, like a Al-Andalus or the other one after. I'll look it up. Okay. It's very poetic, especially in Spanish. It really is. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole rich history of Spain and the Reconquista as well. But once these crusades fail, it leads to problems. Like this order goes into crisis. And one reason is they had set up this system of selling indulgences, meaning you want to launch a crusade, you send out preachers to ask for donations. And you promise if you donate to this cause, that gives you an indulgence, meaning it excuses you from performing other acts of penance. So if maybe you were supposed to fast or give money to the poor, if you donate to this cause instead, you get an indulgence. You're excused from those other acts of penance. Well, the Crusades are going nowhere. So the Vatican starts selling indulgences for other things, like funding the building of St. Peter's. They wanted to rebuild St. Peter's Basilica. So they're sending out preachers saying, donate to this cause of building a big church and you'll get an indulgence, which to some people sounds like they're saying you can buy your way into heaven. Right. Give money to the Vatican for this crazy boondoggle, you'll get into heaven. And so that naturally upsets Martin Luther and causes him to post his 95 Theses. And the Protestant Reformation explodes from there. So you really can see a very close line from the failure of the Crusades to the outbreak of the Protestant Reformation. So really, when the Crusades fail, the medieval Christian worldview fails. Things go into crisis and things start to break up.
By the way, I just have to add, it was apparently, let me just do a screen share or something because it would drive me crazy. And then we'll bring you back in, your thing back in. But here is okay. All right, let's see. You llora como mujer lo que no has sabido defender como hombre. That doesn't make sense because, I guess it's he cries. I know it as the mother saying it to her son, which would make it lloras. No, it doesn't make sense. It should be lloras. Anyway, but it's
So it's that
Boabdil, the last the
Muslim ruler of Granada.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
That's
Yeah,
a great line.
Yeah, which fell in 1492,
Yeah.
and that leads to the expulsion order and Columbus. Yeah, also very pivotal.
Yeah, sorry, I had to put it in there. Okay, I'm back.
But in a way, that's a good transition, right? Because this order we've been talking about is falling apart and falling into crisis. But at the same time, the Spanish and the Portuguese, they have completed the reconquest of Iberia. What do they do next? They start sending out adventurers to go conquer, raid, and pillage around the world. So their knowledge and contact with the world explodes far beyond what they had known in the crusading era, right? And this leads eventually to the creation of a new globalism, right? A new ideology, a new view of the world. And it's pioneered most of all by this Catholic priestly order, the Jesuits, who become sort of you could say the scholarly explorers who go around the world following after these sort of, conquistador, raiding, pillaging, kidnapping adventurers, right? The Jesuits follow quickly after them on their heels. And they're the ones who actually learn about the world. They serve as scholars, diplomats, emissaries.
De las Casas is a Jesuit, right?
He was a Dominican.
Dominican, okay.
Which is similar in a lot of ways. They're also a scholarly order. But
have some liberation theology going on sometimes when they're not really reactionary.
You could see them as progenitors or forerunners to that. But that the real liberation theology from the 1960s is much more radical.
Right,
but the Dominicans, but a significant thing about the Dominicans and the Jesuits is that they did believe in viewing non-Christian peoples in the world with some respect.
Yeah,
they
had souls. They had souls.
They have souls. They have some basic rights. They're not just barbarians.
Right.
And they believed that you should learn about different peoples in the world in order to convert them. Right. You want to convert them all to Catholicism, but they believe in looking at people with some degree of respect and respecting their customs.
I forget. Did we talk about the cast paintings when you were on before?
I don't remember exactly. No, but
perfect example of that. But sorry. So you should learn about their customs.
Yeah, and the Jesuits become the great purveyors of knowledge. They're the ones who learn languages, they learn geography, botany, biology, and they gather this knowledge back in these enormous libraries in Europe. And this is just one view of just one of them that's in Germany. And they have these books with detailed drawings and accounts of indigenous Americans in China and Japan and on and on. So they're real, global thinkers. And this is an example of a Jesuit map. So this is the Matteo Ricci map that he created in China in the early 1600s and gave to the emperor, the Wanli emperor. And so this is a totally different kind of map, right? We no longer have east at the top. We have north at the top now. And the world is laid out much more like a modern map, right? And this one has the Pacific in the middle, and China is here. China is pretty close to the center, right? He's sort of looking out at the world more from the perspective of China and trying to fit everything, all this new knowledge of all these lands and continents into this world picture, right? So this is something very different, and you could say much more sophisticated than those medieval world maps, right? With just the 3 continents centering around Jerusalem. So this Jesuit worldview, it's much more decentered, right? There isn't really so much a center to it, but they're gathering knowledge in this sort of network, right? This network of colleges, missions, libraries. And then this is Urbano Monte's world map from 1587. And he was not a Jesuit himself, but he was gathering a lot of his knowledge from these missionaries like Jesuits. And he created this massive world map. You can't convey how huge it is. It's like as big as a room. And it's arranged around the North Pole. So this is a totally new, different way of representing the world, right? And in a way, you could say it's kind of more fair. It's more equal, right? No particular continent, no particular country, no particular city is at the center. It all revolves around this North Pole. So this is a much more sort of decentered, diffuse way of understanding the world. And so this Jesuit system, it's decentralized. What unifies it is the sacraments, right? The 7 Christian sacraments. And that's what brings you into the Catholic Church and into this global system, right? And you could say their ultimate expression, the way they project themselves out into the world, is these missions, right? And some of these missions are like tiny outposts in the mountains in South America. Some of them are offices at grand imperial courts, like in the imperial court in China. They had a serious presence there, right, in the capital in China. And this is a depiction of Matteo Ricci, the guy who made that map, with one of his high-status, high-class converts at the Chinese imperial court, right? So you could say they're bringing together the high and the low, right? High status and low status, different languages, different lands. It's this huge embracing world system. Okay, now what's going on with the Protestants? So remember, we said, well, the Protestants, the Reformation happens, the Protestants break away. For about 300 years, you could say, the Protestants are not part of this world at all. They are not thinking globally. They are not gathering this kind of knowledge. They're not sending out missions. Missionism really is not something Protestants tend to do for hundreds of years. They're much more inward looking, and they have a belief system rooted in scripture, right? Scripture alone. So they're intensively studying the Bible. They see the sort of unifying belief system of their whole world as the gospel, right? And they, in a way, interestingly, they kind of go back to looking at the world more like the medievals. Jerusalem is at the center. So if you look at this is a supposed world map, or it's a mappa mundi, a sort of diagram of the world, made by a Protestant minister in Germany named Bunting. So here you have Jerusalem again at the center, and these 3 continents are projecting out from Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem is the unifying focal point in the middle. So they've gone back to this very old scheme of the world is 3 continents. It all centers on Jerusalem. The one other thing they've thrown in here in the corner is America. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, there's also this new thing, America, that we don't really know much about, but that's going to become important, right? The Protestants are the ones who put Jerusalem back at the center of everything. And they say, what about America? How does that fit into the scheme? Maybe that relates to this sort of grand biblical story of the world, right? Maybe America is somehow a recreation of something that we know of from the Bible, from this sacred providential history from the Bible. So the Protestants, a lot of them are really obsessed with Jerusalem and with Solomon's temple. This even more specifically becomes the center of their world. And you see Protestant scholars trying to study, to recreate what Solomon's temple really looked like. Some of them also go to Jewish scholars, to rabbis, and say, we want to learn Hebrew, we want to learn Aramaic, we want to study these ancient texts like the Talmud to learn everything we can about Jerusalem, the temple. Some of them entertain the idea maybe they can rebuild the temple. This was discussed in the Dutch Republic. Maybe we should build Solomon's temple here. So there's this new kind of obsession with Jerusalem and the temple and how it relates to the Protestants themselves, right? And the Protestants start to see themselves as sort of the new Israelites, the people who are going to return and recreate the ancient Israelite kingdom or republic, as the case may be. Okay, here, this is a recreation of the supposed layout of Solomon's temple by a Swedish scholar. And then on the right, this is the layout of the town of New Haven in Connecticut.
Wow.
Right? New Haven, the new safe place, right? The new sacred, protected place, right? It's one of many, many places in colonial America, especially colonial Protestant America, that these colonists see as a sort of new Jerusalem, right? And they're even literally patterning themselves on how they imagine Jerusalem and Solomon's temple. So there's it runs all the way through, right? Right from the Puritans and Virginia too, don't want to leave them out, right on up to modern times. This idea that America is the new Israel and that American civilization is the new Jerusalem.
Right.
Okay, and just and briefly, so this is before the Puritan colonists even landed. This is when they're still on the ship across the ocean. Their chief minister, John Winthrop, who then will become governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, he likens what they're doing to the ancient Israelites journeying through the desert, right? We shall find that the God of Israel is among us, when 10 of us shall be able to resist 1,000 of our enemies, right? Military success and conquest are signs of this divine favor and signs that you are the new Israel, right? When he shall make us a praise and glory that men shall say of succeeding plantations, the Lord make it like that of New England, right? We will be a model, right?
Right.
For we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill, and the eyes of the world are upon us. This is a phrase that people use again and again. Even, Ronald Reagan famously used this in speeches. We're a city upon a hill, right? We're a utopia, and we're a model. The rest of the world will imitate us, right? So this I think you can see as the roots of this liberal international worldview, right? America is the model. Everyone's going to mimic us. It will be a United States of the world, right? Okay. And this sort of crystallizes in what you can call American civic millennialism. People also call it the American civic religion, right? American history is providential. It's guided by God, and it recreates the events of the Bible, right? It is our national destiny to save the world, right? We are going to lead the world into this millennium, and hence wars that the U.S. engages in and our westward expansion are all divinely ordained and providential. And this, we've heard terms like this many times. People associate this with evangelical Christianity, and it's very much embedded there, right? But even very secular thinkers sort of can't resist using these terms too. And if you look at this image, it might be a little hard to make out, but you see here a man in robes extending his hand. That's Moses.
Yeah. Right.
So he's leading the Israelites to the Red Sea and parting the Red Sea. And then in the foreground here are Pharaoh and the army being drowned in the Red Sea. So this is this dramatic moment in the book of Exodus, right, where the Israelites are escaping Egypt to freedom. This is what Ben Franklin wanted to be the United States seal. Okay, they didn't end up going with this. They did the eagle.
Wow.
Maybe that's easier to draw, just an eagle holding some things in its talons. But Ben Franklin, who is like a deist, like barely Christian, this is what he believes should represent the United States, right? We are the new Israelites, and the American Revolution is the new Exodus. And you think of it, the American civilization is created because of Europeans crossing the ocean, right? So that crossing of the ocean, too, can be recast as the new Exodus crossing the Red Sea to freedom, right? So this is the American sort of religious ideology. And then you see many American writers who try to sort of define what is America about. They keep saying America is the new Israel or the new Zion, right? That is the theme. And there's one particular writer here who I think is so interesting. So Hector St. Jean de Crèvecoeur was a French-American writer. And in 1782, he wrote Letters from an American Farmer. And the really famous one is this third one called What is an American? Where he's trying to say, like, well, we've created this new state. Who are these Americans? What is this nation about, if it even is a nation? And he says, okay, individuals of all nations are melded together into a new race, right? There's this sort of idea of the melting pot, right? And then he says, Americans are the Western pilgrims who are carrying along with them that great mass of arts, sciences, vigor, and industry, which began long since in the East. They will complete the great circle. So I remember reading this and thinking, what is he talking about? What is this great circle? It actually makes sense when you think about it, when he says they're the Western pilgrims. That's a really key way to describe Americans, because in the medieval world, people went on pilgrimage all over the place. But the ultimate destination, the great pilgrimage site everyone would want to go to, is, of course, Jerusalem, right?
Not Florida. I thought you were going to say Florida.
Now, that is the new Jerusalem, truly, is Broward County, Florida. But you would go east, right? And you would go to Jerusalem, you'd go to the Holy Sepulchre, and you'd come back with a palm frond to show that you had journeyed all the way to the Holy Land in Jerusalem. Americans, he's saying here, are the Western pilgrims. They're going the other way. But the destination is ultimately the same. They're going to complete the Great Circle. They're going to go all the way east by going west, right? They're going to circle the globe. So already here, it's like a religious imperial vision, right? The extension of America is this pilgrimage that's going to eventually loop all the way back to Jerusalem. And hence the American West is like this new Holy Land, right? It's this new Zion. So you see, like Joseph Smith, this whole America is Zion itself from north to south, right? And you hear sermonizers, ministers, referring to this phrase, our American Israel.
Right. And the book, right? There's a book named after that.
Yeah.
Right?
And I've got the book here.
Oh, great.
Fantastic book, which, I would talk about more. Amy Kaplan sadly died shortly after this book came out, so she can't go on the podcast and talk about it. But this is a book about what we were talking about how the Israel lobby is so effective because they successfully cast Israel as a sort of new America, a kind of recreation of America, an extension of America into the desert, right? This supposed idea of the Zionist pioneers going into the desert, bringing it under cultivation, extending civilization. It's a repeat of the American myth of going into the West, right? And taming the West, right? And you see these incidents like Exodus, the novel Exodus. The main character goes out riding on a horse with a bullwhip.
Wow.
Right? It's like the cowboy vision projected into the Middle East, right? But this analogy goes both ways, right? America is the new Israel. Israel is the new America. The two are identified with each other.
Right.
Okay. The great enemy of all this is the Catholic Church. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Protestant Americans who believe in this millennial vision, they are terrified of Catholic infiltration, right? They believe Catholicism is the perversion of everything America stands for: the gospel, the Bible, Protestantism, democracy, liberty. They see the Catholic Church as like a conspiracy against all those things. So there's violence against Catholics. There are riots. A convent in Boston is burned in 1832. There's a whole party, the Know Nothing Party, that's built on anti-Catholicism. Right. So what you're seeing here really is an alignment. It's Judeo-Protestant, right? The Protestant American vision believes they are like the new Israelites, and the Catholics are the enemy of both, right? That's how Protestant Americans view it. Okay, so this is sort of tying all of this together. America is, in the providence of God, destined to lead the way in the moral and political emancipation of the whole world. He's already saying that in 1835, when the U.S. is not even very big. It's not a major power, but it's already this grandiose vision. And the religious and political destiny of our nation is to be decided in the West, right? We have to get Protestants into the West to stop the Catholics, because otherwise the Catholics will get it, right? That's why you've got to fight Mexico, right? That's why you've got to seize all that territory and move Protestant settlers, pioneers in there, right? To stop the Catholics, right? It's part of this Protestant versus Catholic struggle. Okay, Zionism is tied to this almost from the beginning. Okay, before there was any movement to colonize Jews in Palestine, there were attempts at creating Jewish homelands in America. This was done several times. It never got very far, but it was seriously tried. And a big attempt was this guy, Manuel Mordecai Noah, or Mordecai Manuel
What a
Noah.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was an American playwright, diplomat. And as sort of his last grand gesture of his career, he raised money and bought this island, Grand Island, which is in the Niagara River right across from Buffalo. And he wanted it to be a Jewish homeland, to make it a Jewish city. And they got a ways doing that. They surveyed it. They started selling lots, but the whole thing crashed. And one of the reasons was because a lot of his supporters were Freemasons, and the anti-Masonic movement broke out, 1826. Wow. And that kind of pulled the rug out from under this project. But Masons were very much part of this project. And this sort of Zionist dream of creating a Jewish homeland, it started in America in the sense of we can create a Jewish homeland here in America before there was any prospect or possibility of doing it in Palestine. Okay.
Interesting.
And it has roots, as you've mentioned before, it has roots even earlier in Protestant Europe, especially in England, right? This idea that Jews should be regathered. It starts off as a Protestant European idea, but it actually, they start trying to do it in America in the 1800s.
Yeah. And I mean, politically speaking, like the political Zionists were, the first Zionists were Christian, not Jews.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The idea of creating a new modern Jewish state. They were Christian. Right. And it was very much tied into this American millennial Protestant vision as well. So when you put these strands together, the expansionism, the civic millennialism, the sort of proto-Zionism, the anti-Catholicism, this gives rise then to a new sort of Protestant globalism. Okay, a new global system to compete with the Catholic one. Okay. Right. And it's rooted in the US and the UK, and it emerges in the 1800s. So this is an early example, the earliest I found, of a Protestant missionary world map produced in London, 1839. And this one is innovative. It's unusual in that it divides the world up into nation states with borders. You think of those medieval maps, they didn't have borders. They had nodes, right? Cities, fortresses, right? Connected by routes. They didn't see the world as divided up into discrete zones with borders. That's a very modern idea, and it comes a lot from this Protestant missionary movement, which really starts in the 1820s and 30s, which is a lot later than you might think, right? We associate Protestant Christianity so much with missionaryism, right? But that really didn't happen till the early 1800s. And they start to build a new sort of world picture and body of world knowledge. They learn languages, but their main language that they spread is English, right? This is an English-speaking movement. This is another world map from a little later, 1846. So this one is another Protestant missionary world map, and it divides the world up by religions. So you've got your blue is Protestant. They're the good guys, right? According to this view of the world. Red is Catholic. So they're like, well, you know, we don't really trust them. They're like technically Christian, but we think they're corrupt and don't trust them. There's Eastern Orthodox here sort of in pink, and then Islam in orange. So those are your other sort of monotheistic religions that you can kind of do business with, right? And then the dark gray is heathens, right? That's how they called the rest of the world who wasn't Christian or Muslim. They're all heathens. Right. And so that is the ultimate missionary field, to go out there into those dark areas and spread Protestantism, right? The true Christian faith as they saw it. So this is what American and British missionaries are thinking. And eventually America really becomes the center of this missionism. And here it's not totally clear, but the little red dots, there are these red dots all around in Southern Africa, India, a whole bunch. Those are Protestant missions, right? So they are spreading the gospel, and with that, they're spreading what they associate with the gospel, the English language and American Protestant life ways, right? Marriage, sex, clothing, diet. Even more, compare that with the Jesuits. The Jesuits were like, you go to China, you dress like a Chinese person, right? When in Rome, okay? The Protestants are, no, we're going to civilize you by making you Anglo-American Protestant. Your lifestyle, your values, your language are going to become like us, right? It's much more assimilating, right? And it piggybacks off this American civic millennialism, right? The sense that we as Americans are destined to save the world. Okay. Okay. And then it also, like the Jesuits, it piggybacks off of colonialism and imperialism, right? US takes over a bunch of islands in the Pacific, annexes Hawaii, also in the Caribbean. So Spanish-American War, 1898. The U.S. obtains Puerto Rico and the Philippines, which we don't talk about very much. Philippines are a large country, right? The U.S. ruled the Philippines and brutally suppressed resistance in the Philippines. And these all provided huge mission fields for American missionaries to sort of learn and cut their teeth, right, on trying to Americanize and Protestantize people around the world. Okay. So again, empire, colonialism, missionism, all connected together. Okay, so
Sam, one question though. Okay,
yeah.
question. Do you want to? This is like a whole new section, and it's very good. Do you want to do? Do you want to do this part like tomorrow, or do you want to keep going and finish it? Which you can do. I just have to go off screen at a certain point. And
okay.
And walk talkie, honestly. But I'm happy to do it either way. It's up to you. Because I don't want you to not go through this next segment.
That's okay. I mean, I can be short. I can be short. It's kind of recapping what we've mentioned before.
No, it gets really good here, but okay. But I'm gonna go off screen. I have to go off screen because I have Bucky's going crazy.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Whatever you need to do, I'm fine with keeping going. And since we've set everything up and people are here, I'm fine with
so let's keep going. Yeah, I just need to, for like 5 minutes, be off screen.
Okay.
And I'll keep watching on my phone.
Okay.
Brad, why don't you Brad, swap in for me. Just because I didn't. Okay, great. All right, give me 5 minutes, okay? Okay, I'll be watching though. All right, great. I'm gonna remove myself. Okay, keep going. This is the really exciting part.
Okay. Hi, Brad.
Sam, this is man, you are thorough. I am very impressed.
I hope that's a compliment. No,
it is a compliment. You know, because
I was just furiously typing things in slides this afternoon. Like,
no, absolutely. But I'm just blown away because a lot of the time, you know, when people all these discussions about Zionism, etc. I mean, people rightly refer back to, you know, parts of the 20th century, but I mean, you're taking it all the way back, and that's awesome.
Well, and I think, you know, part of what I wanted to do was sort of show a context for Israel and Zionism that isn't just coming out of the Jewish world, which, you know, obviously is important, but this earlier context is kind of crucial, I think, to understanding, like, why are Americans so obsessed with Israel?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I sort of sketched out, okay, we have these global systems, right? The Jesuit Catholic system, this Protestant missionary system, which now is spreading out from America and Britain, right? All of this gets thrown into huge doubt and crisis in the 20th century, most of all with fascism and the Holocaust. So this is an image here of a Lutheran priest, or Lutheran bishop, a so-called Reichsbishop, and a Catholic bishop meeting and shaking hands with Hitler in Nuremberg in 1934. So these worldviews and the churches, these Protestant and Catholic churches, get enormously tainted and to a great degree discredited by their complicity with fascism and then the Holocaust, right? They lose tremendous moral authority from, you could say, this failure. Now, this is not to say that there weren't Protestant and Catholic people and Protestant and Catholic clergy who opposed the Nazis and opposed the Holocaust. There absolutely were. But a lot of them did it kind of on their own and underground. It was not coordinated from the Vatican. Pope Pius XII, very much tainted by inaction against the Nazis in the Holocaust.
And when you say tainted by inaction, do you mean like universally tainted, or was it limited in terms? You know what I mean?
Well,
in everyone's
Okay, I'm
eyes,
back.
or
I'm back.
well, as for Pius XII, he has admirers and he has supporters and he has defenders who will say that he was not as guilty as some people hold him to be.
Mhm.
But I would say he is universally tainted, even in the eyes of his supporters and his defenders. He's still tainted and does not come out looking great because he didn't take a stand against.
And one similar question before I leave you here. I really appreciate this opportunity. I don't know if you have any thoughts on, and maybe it's just my own perspective is incorrect, but this kind of reminds me also of the convenient friendships or partnerships between like the Henry Fords and the Rockefellers, etc. During that period of time, that at least in the American popular history lens, at least a lot of people in the mainstream, I don't think they have a very tainted image of all of those people. And I was wondering if you think that's accurate or I'm mistaken there, and if I'm correct, why do you think that is?
And for that answer, we're going to have to do a Patreon. If you are watching this in real time, you are so lucky because you just saw a nearly 3-hour-long show. If you are watching this later and you want to see the full chat with Sam, then you can find that at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And boy, Brad, are they going to want to see the full chat or what?
I know I messaged you.
Yeah.
I know I messaged you while we were doing that, and I wasn't kidding. It's, at least for me personally, this has got to be the most thorough laying out of what we all, the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
In this regard,
I was he's very literally impressed. Walking us through receipts for the last 2,000 years. Impressive. Yeah, true. It's a good.
Yeah, I mean, he really who is, oh my gosh, Bernie's senior advisor.
Wait, which
he's
one?
like the king of receipts.
You don't mean advisor. The economist, the guy who's always talking about oh my God, what is?
No, he's always like sitting right next to him.
Warren Gunnels. Is it Warren Gunnels? Okay, yeah, Warren Gunnels, yeah.
I believe, yeah. I'm so sorry, Warren,
great.
if you see this.
Yeah, Warren, you got to come on the show. You are really good. Yeah, he is the Warren Gunnels of history.
He's like the king of receipts. Sam, he's really giving him a run for his money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam's like, hold my beer. Here's Warren Gunnels.
Hold my scroll.
Yeah, seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
There's Warren Gunnels.
He's awesome.
He's really good. AKA Chief of Receipts, Minority Staff Director for Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Ranking Member, Senator Sanders, blatantly pro-union, AKA Chief of Receipts. And here we go, just a recent one. Jeff Bezos, worth $240 billion, sailed on his $500 million yacht to a $55 million wedding in Venice to give his wife a $5 million ring, and spends $12 and spends $12.7 million on union busting so he can replace workers with robots. His tax rate 1.1%. 5 words: tax billionaires out of existence. I like it. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos has it Bezos or Bezos? Jeff Bezos.
I always say Bezos.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos has become $227 billion richer since 2012, increasing his wealth by 1,135%, while Amazon spends over $12 million a year to prevent workers from joining a union. The problem is not the poor kid who gets $6 a day in food stamps. The problem is the Walton family, worth $469 billion, and Jeff Bezos, worth $247 billion, pay wage so low that their workers need food stamps. The real welfare queens are the billionaires who pay starvation wages. Very good. All right.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right.
No,
Well, guys,
I'd
thank
love
you.
to have them on someday.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
it would be great. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And again, to see that full chat, patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Wait, we have to put in, do you have the photos of Bucky and Bodie? Oh, man. It's okay. We'll have to do it after the Halloween fact. Okay.
I dropped the ball on that.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
It's all right. Well, guys, have a happy Halloween. Stay safe. I'm not going to be anything political, sadly, because I'm going to be doing something though that's Bucky related.
Do you know what you're gonna be?
Yeah, I'm going to be Princess Leia. Because.
Oh.
What do you mean? Oh, you clearly didn't pay attention to what I sent you.
Well, no. Well, because Bucky is going to be what?
Wait! Don't say.
Either an Ewok or Chewbacca.
No, not an Ewok. Brett, how long have we known each other? And you have to say either Chewbacca, either an Ewok or Chewbacca. Who's the Ewok? She's been here.
They're good. They're both. Yeah. So they're both gonna have costumes.
Yeah, but obviously, I would never have Bucky be. True,
fair. Yeah.
An Ewok because now you really have to show. Now you really do have to find that thing. I showed it on the show once, but here, let me show you Bucky.
Okay.
Let me show you what Bucky's going to be. Hold on.
I can
Here's
pull
Bucky.
that.
I got Bucky. What I need is the Bodhi from you, but here's Bucky. Look at that.
Oh.
That's a Chewbacca. Whatchamacallit? Chewbacca. What's it called? The thing that he wears? Bandolier?
Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what that thing is called, and I apologize to anyone who does.
Yeah, for being smarter than you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there. Just for Bucky. You guys get it, right? That's a weird cat. Who said that? That's Chewbacca. All right. Well, I really need to show Bodhi, but we'll have to show her later. All right. Bye, everyone.
Well, if you or
you guys will know
you want me to find it
right?
because I can.
Well,
I would hope so.
We'll show you next week.
I would hope people. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I would hope people would know who Chewbacca is, but
yeah. All right. Bye, everyone. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show for everything. And thank you so much. And see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Okay, I'm down.